G'day YouTube, my name's Lance. Welcome to Bundy Bear's Shed. Well, today I'm going to play around with a David Brown 880 Selectamatic control valve. Now, I have bought a David Brown 880 with no hydraulics in it, and I knew it was like that when I bought it, but on my tractor, the main control valve here is crook. You can actually see that it's stuck. So I was lucky enough to have an old 880 out the back that was a wreck I bought off a bloke. He pulled the engine apart one time and come and saw me and said, look, I'll never get this back together. You want to buy it off me? So I did. And it sat out the back here for many years, probably 5, 6, 7 years, a long time. And I bought the 880 out the back, and I didn't know what was wrong with the hydraulics. I just knew it didn't have any. I'm an ex-David Brown field service fitter, so I thought it'd be a challenge just to have a go at it and see. Perhaps I can get it sorted out, perhaps I can't. It has a good engine, it's just the hydraulics don't work and the PTO clutch is stuck. So I bought the tractor, and I've been doing a few little videos on bits and pieces, like making the Selectamatic valve setting tool and a few things like that. But in the process of doing a bit of research, a refresher, even though I was a field service fitter for David Brown back in the day, at about 1988 they closed our branch. So I've done a few since, but they haven't been my bread and butter like they were way back then. So I am a bit rusty, so we'll work through this. It'll be a bit of fun and we'll just see how we go. But through the course of this video, it's mainly about this tractor service bulletin, and I'll have a couple of photos or screenshots of this service bulletin. Now, it's TSB 43 hydraulics. It was for the home and overseas market, so you know, England, Australia, wherever else they were sold in America. And the date of the bulletin is August 1967. And it says static testing of the Selectamatic control valve assembly. Further to Tractor Service Bulletin 23, hydraulics, which was issued as a service information following the introduction of a Selectamatic system, we now believe that many distributors and dealers are conversant with the working principles of the Selectamatic control valve unit and could carry out further testing and rectification of defective units in normal service procedure. So they go on to say the majority of defects reported are of minor nature and can be directly attributed to dirt in the system or incorrect adjustments. The following notes and diagrams outline the test procedure which can be carried out by dealer staff in their workshops to check for the correct functioning of individual valves within the Selectamatic control valve assembly, so in this fella here. Equipment required comprises a simple test rig utilising a hand-operated injector tester, which all distributors and most dealers already have. This is coupled to the control valve assembly by a pipe adapter, and they give us a diagram, which will come up on the screen now, of the dimensions and all about making this adapter. There's a square. I've made mine round. It was just easy to do that in the lathe for me. Where they have an injector tester, I've chose not to put oil in my injector tester. I have a hand pump here. It's a 10,000 psi hand pump, but you don't have to take it to 10,000 psi. And the oil I have in the system here is the same oil that I would put in the back of a David Brown tractor, like a Hydrotrans, something along those lines. It goes on under the diagram down the bottom. It says oil, the universal grades of lubrication oil for testing as recommended for the tractor transmission. So that's what I've put in my Porter Power. Before removing the valve for bench testing, ensure that all checks have already been carried out with the valve in situ. So yeah, that's whether the arms are coming up and down, what's going on, you know, bypass valve, things like that. Operate the handle of the injector tester and build up a pressure of 2,000 pounds per square inch or 136 atmospheres on an injector tester. Maintain pressure whilst establishing the leakage points. So on the first page, we'll go back to a photo of the first page, and you can see A, B, C and D as leakage points, and on page 3 of the service bulletin it says leakage at the following points indicate which valves are defective. So A is the hold valve, B is the non-return valve, C is the spool valve, or D is the hold valve. So what the plan is with my valve here, I bought this tractor with an engine that wasn't going. I have no clue if the hydraulics are working or not. I believe they were. He was a a fencing contractor, and I believe his tractor, the hydraulics were working as far as I was aware. I don't know that really, but the tractor got wrecked because he had the engine in pieces. So I've gone out and I've taken the valve out of that tractor. I've left my tractor that I bought, the new one, running, just so I can move it around the paddock and things like that. So what I've decided to do is run through the tests in this service bulletin. Before I do the valve up, I'd like to run through the tests on the valve, and I'll run through the valve, clean it out, wash it out. It's been sitting for many years. See what I can find wrong with it, and in conjunction with this, and once I've run through the valve, had a quick look and have tidy up and flush it out with parts washing fluid and things like that, and blown it out, put it back together, assemble it as per the workshop manual, and I'd like to do this test again before we put it in the tractor. It's just a way of ensuring that when I put this valve in the tractor, if it doesn't want to lift for some reason, it can be if it lifts and just won't hold, it can be the piston O-ring or something like that. It can be something else, a cracked pipe or something similar. So I'll bring the camera in close. We'll just do a couple of tests. This is just out of interest at the moment. This isn't a how-to, it's just how Lance's tractor's going. On this bulletin as well, it says the relief valve should blow off at 2,500 pounds, and if necessary should be reset to this pressure by removal and replacement of shims. So I imagine we can do that here too. Back in the day when I was a field service fitter for David Brown, a lot of these bulletins in those old workshops, the senior and upper management would have them, and I can't remember getting sat down at the smoko room table and saying, here's the new bulletins, you want to run through them. They'd just come out and say, oh look, you need to check this now and check that, and it was a word in the ear at the bench, and I had never seen this bulletin until recently. So let's have a play with it, work through it, and look, it'll just be an interesting little exercise. So I'll bring the camera in and we'll see what we've got. I believe you can see that gauge out there. Okay, so the first test is just to pump the valve up and see where it leaks from. So we'll try and do that. And you can see it's just pouring out the back there. I can't get any pressure. I'm 30 pound and it's pouring out the back there. So I'll have a look at the bulletin, and it says C. If it's leaking out of C, it's a sticking or incorrect adjustment of the spool valve will allow oil to leak out the small drilled hole at point C. So I'll put the bulletin back over here for a minute, try and keep it a bit clean. I can always print out another one. Try and keep it a bit clean. So if it's poor adjustment, let's have a look. So if we bring him up and pump him up again, oh look at that, that's out with no pressure at all. So I had already, well, I did a quick test before the filming, but let's have a look. I just loosened the lock nuts to see how we went. So if we lift it up, that means it's pouring out quicker. So let's let that spool valve sit down a bit. There is, on the end of the spool valve, there's a figure that says the amount of spool valve travel for this valve. So each one's different. So we'll just go down there a little bit. Oh, and look at that. So we're still getting oil out of C, but we're up to 700 pounds. All right, let's continue. Let's see if we can sneak up on it, or it's just a very leaky spool. We'll go a fair bit. You know, we have to strip it out anyway. Okay. So there you go. That is, I'll move the hand pump so I can get the 2,000 pound if possible. There's 2,000 pound. So what I can notice is there is just a very, very slight weep out the front hole here. This is where the rate of drop screw would have normally gone in. The front, so I'll call them by name for the bulletin, just so we're all on the same page here. Okay, so A, there's a very, very slight weep there. I'll try and hold him up around 2,000. There's a very slight weep. There is a slight weep out the back there still around the spool. So it probably needs a good clean and a sort out there. B, the port that takes the oil across to the lift cylinder, there's nothing coming out of there. And D, up the top here, there's nothing coming out of there. So all in all, we'd probably think this is okay. I've just cracked the relief. So D, let's have a look at D. D is the hold relief valve. By increasing the pressure to 2,500 psi, 170 atmospheres, the setting of the hold relief can be checked. When the valve blows off, oil will show at the hole in the top of the cap, point D. So I've gone up and it's leaking, but you can see it's leaking about 2,000. The whole thing probably needs a big flush out. So that's the whole valve. Hold relief valve. Well, the whole relief should blow off at 2,500 pounds, and if necessary, reset. So I would say once that's come off the seat, we've got a bit of rubbish in there, and we're right to go. But in doing this, these tests that we're doing, they brought out a service bulletin, and the service bulletin number, where are we? Where are we here? The service bulletin number TSB 62, so that's TSB 62 for home and overseas market, September 1968. So a month after the first bulletin came out, they brought out another bulletin. So we'll put the camera back, we'll get in frame and we'll talk about that. Okay, Tractor Service Bulletin 62 Hydraulics. Here's a copy of it here on your screen. Now, it says further to Tractor Service Bulletin 43, which is the one that tells us how to check the valve, we wish to clarify certain points of test procedure regarding the hydraulic control valve assembly, and in particular the permissible leakage of various valves within the unit when being tested with the CAV nozzle tester or similar rig, as outlined in the above bulletin. Under the high working pressure involved, a slight weepage at the specific points indicated in the bulletin is acceptable and does not mean the control valve is defective. Provided that the total amount of leakage is not excessive, the total combined leakage from the relief valve, hold valve, hold valve, spool valve and non-return valve should not exceed 0.2 of a cubic inch a minute or 3.2 cc's a minute. you can't measure that. Anyway, when using Shell Universal Oil at 45 degrees centigrade, viscosity 75 centistrokes. It's appreciated that above figures which are part of our production test schedule as acceptable figures are not easily measurable when using the distributor dealer test equipment. However, the object of this bulletin is to emphasise that a slight leakage at these valves is permissible and is in no way an indication that the unit is defective. When using the simple test equipment described in TSB 43 hydraulics, a general guide to the permissible leakage from various points can be obtained by comparing the unit under test with parts from new stock. So what they're telling, what they're saying is they put this test guide out, the service fitters, the dealers, were testing the valve, and they were saying, oh, there's a little bit coming out here, a little bit out there, so they were returning them for warranty, and there was nothing really wrong. So they had to put another bulletin out in September 1968 to clarify that just a little dribble's okay. You know, there will be leakage in the valve, past the spool, things like that. There will be a little bit, but it won't affect the operation of the tractor. But they're saying get a new one from parts stock, pump it up and test it. Well, now I doubt you could even buy a new one. I'd be very surprised if you can buy a new one. When using the injector tester, it's important only to apply pump pressure and allow the upper control passage to fill with oil before checking for leakage. Failure to do this will show an excessive leakage until the valves are fully balanced. So what they're saying there is when you pump it up, you could probably pull that valve up and let the valve bleed through, let the oil bleed out, then let the valve back down to seat again, and then you know the valves have enough oil inside to balance each other out, sort of thing, when they need to. The latching valve. Slight leakage at the latching valve plug is normal, so that's D, so that's the latching valve. We've got to find that now. But slight leak at the latching valve plug, okay, be out here, I think, is normal and no attempts must be made to affect the seal. Any attempts to further tighten this plug will result in the end of the valve plug being forced over the circlip on the sleeve and consequently jamming the latching valve. So it's an interesting little bulletin. I'm going to pull this valve apart now. I'm going to tidy the bench up, lay it all out and pull it all apart and see what I can find, and either in this video or next video we'll set it all up and run through, clean everything, polish everything, make sure there's nothing stuck that shouldn't be stuck, and just service it as best we can in a old tractor bloke shed and see how we go. So yeah, look, stay tuned, keep an eye out. It may be, well, I wasn't going to do the full disassembly of this valve in this video, I didn't think, but look, we'll just see how that washes down over time. So yeah, we'll catch you shortly.